It's just a reminder that God is always above us, or all around us. Depends how you view it.
It's always
God's always there.
always there, and wherever we are and whatever we do, it's above us.
So it's a way of showing humility.
Now, is your name Ron?
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that God is what is God to you?
That's an interesting question. Have you ever read? Do you remember reading? What was
Hillel?
Steinbeck's?
Travels with Charlie?
I Travel with Charlie. Grapes of Wrath.
Yeah.
Remember reading that?
Yeah.
Do you remember the protagonist whose name escapes me?
Wait a minute, what's a protagonist?
The main character.
Played by James Dean.
Right. Do you remember at one point he's being hounded by the law and he runs away and he hides out behind some bushes at the side of a creek, and he gets word to his mother to just to let her know that he's okay and he's gone into hiding and he'll be there until the heat's off. You recall that?
Yeah.
Okay. His mother finds out where she is and comes to see him at this hideaway. And they're talking, and at one point she asks him, "How do I know where you are?" And he says to her, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember the exact quote, he says, "Wherever you hear of people standing up for their rights, wherever you hear of people helping other people, whenever you hear of people banding together to help themselves and better themselves and to stand up against tyranny and oppression and poverty and so on and so forth, you'll know that's where I am."
Now,
and that's the best definition of God I've ever read.
the thing that confuses me is all of the, seem to me like pleading and begging and in their prayers and in their solemnities. And I think Hillel put it.
I was just looking at that. Here.
Can you read it?
Yeah, it
It
says.
also has he says that after the Talmudic research and so forth, it all comes down to one thing: be kind to your fellow man.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see. That's where I part with the Jewish ideas of prayer. To me, I call it the divine arranger. And you don't have to do any pleading. It's unconditional love.
It is unconditional love.
So, why all the commotion? Why have I oversimplified it?
No, I think that one of the things that we're not taught in Judaism, that we learn later when we study, is that our relationship with God, because it's so intimate, because it's like a real relationship, it takes on different personalities. So sometimes, just like a child begs and pleads and cries and moans and life isn't fair and all the stuff that children do, sometimes that's our relationship with God. And other times it's...
You mean the individual's relationship?
Right. And so in prayer, what the beauty of Jewish prayer is that it gives you times to have all kinds of behaviors with God. Sometimes it's begging and pleading, and sometimes it's, being forthright and saying, do this, and sometimes it's saying how much I love you, and sometimes it's actually angry. And all those things are in our prayer. All those different relationships.
And it gives credence to any way you want to approach this divine.
Exactly.
So my approach to it is one of simplicity, I guess. So therefore, it's acceptable.
Well, absolutely.
And I went to the services in New York. Man, they went through. The rabbi roamed around and he repeated, and it just seemed like it was a routine that was absolutely excessive.
Well, but we've lost. I can't speak for the Reform prayer style, but certainly within the Orthodox and the Conservative, we've lost the meditative element of prayer, because one of the part purpose and part benefits of prayer is the meditative aspect. When you say the same words every day, day in and day out, year in and year out, you develop it becomes almost a meditation. And so it has many of the benefits of meditation, reflection, heightened awareness, and that's something that's over the years, over the generations, has been lost.
Was it always like that for you? What was it like?
With me, it was
growing up?
I came from an Orthodox family. My mother kept kosher, and they felt that they were pleasing God if they lit the candles, or if they dressed up and went to shul on high holidays. But otherwise, my dad used a runaround on the electricity. That he could get power without going through the meter, and he did all kinds of things that I would consider a holy person wouldn't do. And my mother was so adamant about the need to light the candles and to keep kosher and all like that, that she lost the meaning of it. Like you explained, or Ron explained, that it takes into consideration, the Jewish faith takes into consideration all aspects. The child begging, or the grown-up accepting, and the need to give. So, and then when I announced that I was going to marry a girl that was in the Reform, it was almost like marrying a 60. They didn't like it. They thought that I was. Well, I tell you, their religion was more of a superstition to me than it was what I later found out, because I went in all directions, especially when Sandy died in 1949. We had a little boy, 5.5 years old, that died. I think I told you.
Yeah.
And I was, before that, I was going the usual path, just religion and all like that was a secondary thing.
Was it like that for your brothers and sisters?
Well,
Tell me about your brothers and sisters.
I had one brother that I could think something, he would say it. That was my youngest brother, Hal. And Hal had an abdominal problem since he was 18, and he was always suffering, operation after operation. and he became addicted to his pain relievers. And I had another brother that was an opportunist, and he would take advantage of any move. For instance, Mart furnished the cash for us to buy some land that my brother Ed, this opportunist, found, and it later became very valuable. So I advised Mart to buy Ed out because Ed would infringe on any opportunity he had. So Mart decided that $100,000 was, so he gave Ed a check for 100, and Ed said, Mart, I want the 100, and I'll take the 100, but I want to borrow 18,000. And that was his way of getting a little more out of the thing. So Ed was always a grabber.
Right.
My sister was a complainer. She was a beauty. That's her up to, see where that guy's holding that.
Oh, wow, yeah.
That's her husband, who was a naval officer during the war. And they were a beautiful couple, and she tried to be that sylph-like person all her life, and still is. She's in a home in Philadelphia now. So Estelle never was a person you could accept as equal. She was always hanging on you. But a dear girl, and I've talked to her every week. And when I was in New York, we went by there.
Oh, yeah. Did you have any other sisters?
No, one sister, and there was 4 boys.
Wow.
And Jules was a schlepper. He'd take anything that he gave, and it never occurred to him to be the macher, to be the giver. If the house needed some roofing, he would call me or call Mart and say, my house needs repairing. He just wouldn't, he always looked elsewhere for his redemption.
Where did you grow up?
In Fort Worth.
So the whole how did your family get to Fort Worth?
My dad came over when he was 14 or so, and he lived in New York. He was a tailor apprentice. So when the committee in New York found wherever they would find a job for these immigrants, these greenhorns, they would send them there, give them the railroad fare. So they needed a tailor in Fort Worth, so they sent him to that job. And he stayed in my bubby's, my grandmother's boarding house, and there he met my mother, who was one of the 3 girls that lived there. And later, and he married her in 1907. And then when they had these 5 children. Now the other the sisters, they married, and all of them brought their husband and their family there to that one house at 407 Pecan Street.
Amazing.
Ron, why don't you sit down?
And then how did you meet? So when you were growing up, did you live near them? Did you live near Pecan Street when your parents?
Well, I was growing. We were in that house, all of the cousins and all of us 25 people lived under that one roof, and that's the reason I've always laugh about the
Barlow's?
Well, no, about us living here, we got 3 bedrooms and 3 baths and 2 people and 2 sets of phones and 2 computers and all like that. And here we were, 25 people living in one shack.
Amazing.
With 1 toilet. And that's the irony of life, I guess you might say. And I've never forgotten it.
What
So
were, go ahead.
I've been rich, and I've been poor, and I've been underweight and overweight. So I've had some extremities to deal with, and I'm pretty well rounded out in life.
You found a good balance.
Yeah, I know pretty much about balance, I guess you know. I like that word.
How did you meet Bernice?
We were in a play and that the shul gave, and they called Bernice. She was outstanding. She was a beauty. And then I actually met her when her mother called my company that I was working for, who sold fire insurance. So she wanted some insurance on her furniture, so I went out there on College Street in those days we had to really solicit insurance. Nowadays you beg them, take you. So I went out there and I was talking to her mother, Dina. We later became very close friends. I see this little girl sitting over there doing her book work or whatever. She was a student in a class about 15 years old, and I couldn't get her out of my mind. Here I am, 25 years old, and I'm 22 years old, and she's 15.
I'm listening.
So well, she knows, you know the story. So when she was 18, we got married.
How were you able to see her? I mean, what synagogue did you go to?
Well, when I was, like I say, I was indifferent to it because I was still, I felt like there was something deeper that I didn't know about our religion. At first I thought it was shallow because the kids in shul, the kids ran around and talked, and there was always, so you could always hear noise. It didn't seem to have the solemnity that other religions have. Then again, I had the exposure of, I was an athlete. I played football, and I was the only Jew on the team. So I had a chance to vacillate between my fellows, all in the football team, and my religion. It was always a question mark. You know, I think that I mentioned about Sandy. When we got married, and among other things, Sandy got sick and he died in 1949. And somebody sent me some comforting material from the Unity Church. And I looked in that direction, and I began to get interested in that. So I went to the Unity.
What was it like in your, I'm going to skip around a little bit.
Yeah.
So you were playing football in high school.
Yeah.
And what was it like being the only Jew on the team?
Well, it was a classical example is we were playing against Forest High School here in Dallas. And Fort Worth and Dallas were big natural enemies. I never dreamed that I'd ever come here and play. So we were playing football, and they were killing us. Forest High School had all the foreigners, the Mexicans, the Jews, the Germans, and the Chinese, everybody who was not ethnic to our people, they went to Forest High. So in this game, it must have been 25 to nothing. They were killing us, and we dreaded Forest High School. So in the huddle, he says, "Let's get those damn Jews. Come on, man, let's rally." Hold on. I said, "Time out." I said, "Brownie," his name was Ernest Brown. He was a quarterback. I said, "Brownie, you've been very disrespectful in that remark, because you know I'm Jewish, and I never have hidden it." And he said, "Oh, Brutus, don't pay any attention. I was talking about the Dallas Jews, not the Fort Worth Jews." So that epitomizes the relationship. But I saw then an insight that most people who don't like Jews, I saw then and there that they don't understand it. Just like we say, let's go down to the Chinese and get something to eat, or let's go to the Greeks and have our meal. And I don't think that they have the deep-seated animosity that I've seen the Jewish forwards and so forth, where they're always scared and elaborating about how bad the anti-Semitism is. I think that we're our own worst critics of this.
Sometimes that's true.
And a lot of people would say, "Sure, you've got it easy because you've got a rich son and all like that, so you don't see any of the disharmony that happens." But I think I've seen it all through my life, and I don't think it's the anti-Semitism is as bad as it is made out to be by we the Jewish people. And I think since we got Israel and shown what superior soldiers we are, and pilots, and they're the best trained pilots in the world. So I have a different viewpoint, it seems, than the average person, not always anti-Semitism and all like that.
Do you think part of that was from growing up, where people knew you and then knew you were Jewish and saw it, saw like the personal way that you were just talking about?
Yeah. And I looked in all directions. I went to Unity, to Unitarian, to Buddhism. I looked in all directions, and finally I'm back to Judaism, realizing that it's as good or better than any direction I've looked at before. And I'm so proud to be a Jew. I think we're lucky to be born Jewish, because we have that the genes that maybe the Greeks do when they're athletes. They're the finest athletes in the world, the Greeks. So having that heritage of being Jewish, I think is a privilege.
Okay, so let's go back to time. So you were playing football in high school, and then you finished high school. What did you do after high school?
I took the first, that was during the heart of the Depression. I graduated in 1929, and that's when the Depression started. That's when the stock market fell in the fall of 29. And that's when I got out of school. Jobs were really scarce. So my dad found out that there's a Jewish insurance man, Oscar Seligman, in Fort Worth, that needed a handyman, office boy. So I applied that afternoon, and I got the job. And all the next day, I turned away people that were applying for the jobs that he had advertised in the paper, I think. And Oscar was an education in itself, Oscar Seligman. He was Jewish German refugee, and he was very definite in his calling. He believed that if you had a job, if you're supposed to be there till 2 o'clock, you can't leave until 2. He made no exceptions to the stern directions that he thought. They say that that's typical of the German people.
Right.
So I learned a lot from Oscar about what not to do with your employees. And he died, and they sold the company to Harrison Kennedy and Company, an established insurance agency in Fort Worth, and they took me over. And to make a long story short, I went from office boy, from that Seligman business, to I became a full partner.
Wow.
With Marshall Kennedy. Harrison, they dissolved the partnership, and Kennedy and I went into business, went into equal partnership. And we had some employees that couldn't stand the idea that the office boy is now the owner, is not the boss, is now the boss. So they treated me with what I would term disrespect, especially one woman, Mattie Bell. So I went to Kennedy and I said, I want to fire that girl, that woman. He said, oh, and boy, she was his arms and legs in the bed. She did everything. And he didn't want it. He said, Brudus, what the heck, we're drawing $1,750 a month each, which was big money in those days. He says, we've got $50,000 in the bank. I said, what are you pushing for? He says, you got it good. But I still was writhing under this idea that I had no respect. So I resigned.
Wow.
And went into business myself in '61. And I never did make the money that I did before, and I never did get any bigger than Harrison Kennedy Company. But I learned that I could run a business, and everybody in the business on a first name basis instead of all this formality that Oscar had done.
Did you like it? Did you like what you were doing?
No. After I retired in '77. No, in '72 I retired. I looked back and saw that I had 45 years of, I didn't realize how much I didn't like it. I should have been a teacher or a philosopher or something like that. That was my basics in that department.
So what was your day like? I mean, so you started in this company with Seligman, and
Yeah.
then you met Bernice, right? You worked
Yeah.
there for a while, you met Bernice, and you started your family. Where did y'all live? What was your life like at the beginning with Sandy and then later Mort?
Well, no, Mark was first.
Mort was first, I'm sorry.
Mark was 5 years older than Sandy. He died in '49, so Mark was about 12 years old, I think. Well, I had to adjust myself to this young lady because my partner, my boss, and then later Kennedy, he always told me, he said, she's got the prettiest behind I've ever seen. Boy, he was lusting after her. I can see that now. She was really something else. If I, in another life, I don't think I'd marry such a pretty girl. Anyway, Sandy turned me in the direction of life is more than we think it is. Getting power and money and all like that. And the funny thing is that I learned that the thing that I wanted the most, power and money, came to me when I was quit trying.
Isn't that interesting?
We tried to direct the fate, and I think that the thing that this divine arranger that I spoke of has its own intelligence, and we don't know what it is, like this bus tragedy that we just had. That may affect and project the oncoming generations of the young people. 500 years from now, it might have some good effect to it. And I don't think the divine arranger thinks in terms of time or space. And since life is eternal, I don't think it or he or she, the divine arranger, pays any attention to whether death is involved or not. And we hold it as a criteria of success or non-success. In other words, they're looking to see what could have saved the children, not realizing that this is all part of a dynamic that we'll never know what it's like. And so therefore we accept instead of trying to probe and cultivate and so forth.
So should we be? I mean, should we be probing and cultivating, or should we accept?
I think that accepting with this attitude is the best way. Not I'm a victim and no use protesting and I'll take my licking. Not in that attitude, but there is a intelligence in whatever happens, even the Holocaust. That's part of the scenario, and we should accept and not try to frown on it or seek revenge and vengeance and so forth.
Were your friends like you? What were your friends like? Did they think like you?
No, cranked. Even my own wife don't feel that way. She's more like a normal person. She thinks and she sees it, and I think that she is the type of person that you could talk to about anything, but she don't seem to have the curiosity or the depth that I have in seeking out these things. For instance, when I hear about a new church or a new idea, I'm curious. I want to go to it, and I'm curious. I just like to see. And Crink thinks that maybe I might be like I was before, just seeking to change my religion or something. But I'm more of a Jew than they think I am, and I think that's the way that the Jewishness is supposed to be.
So do you think that you were that you were attracted to people who were very grounded while you were exploring and checking things out? I mean, did you have, what were they like? What did you do with your friends? What was it like?
I didn't have many that felt like I did. I seemed to be a loner. And I didn't have many friends that were along the path like I was. So I assumed an air of tolerance. I let everybody just do whatever they want to or whatever they feel like doing. And I'm friendly to anybody that wants to use any of my ideas or this culture or this frame of mind or whatever you want to call it. So I'm pretty tolerant of anything and everything.
What is that?
I accept.
Okay.
And I like what Hillel said. Hillel said that, as I mentioned before, that you can take all of the studies and all of the involvement and all like that and put it into just plain word. Just be kind to your neighbor and everything else fall into place.
That's right. How did you call it? Why do you call your wife Crink?
When I saw her, she had the crinkliest hair, natural. And then I guess another reason was I was so embarrassed being a 22-year-old man liking this 15-year-old, and then 16 I'm 23, and then 17 I'm 24, and then I think Crink married me to get out of the house, because she was only 18 years old and she knew how attractive she was and appealing to men. So we've had our ups and downs. Like I say, we killed each other 20 times. We divorced 50 times. And all of the stuff that goes on is nothing abnormal about our marriage. It was an average marriage, but we were fortunate that we didn't make it final on any of these things.
Right.
So we've been together 65 years now, and we're crucial companions and friends. And I think that's what we're supposed to be. Now, I didn't mention that I also had another serious thing. I was a victim of depression. And it ran in my mother's side of the family. She and all of her siblings had some form of emotional trouble.
Really? How did you know that? Because in those days it wasn't called that. How did you know?
In those days they didn't know anything about it. They would give you advice about lift yourself up, get hold of yourself, and so forth. They didn't know about depression and so forth. And it came on me suddenly, and I've read since that it's not unusual for afflictions like this, mental, emotional problems to come when you least expect it. They'll hit you broadside. I was in a movie, and all of a sudden I got this horrible feeling of hopelessness.
Wow.
Suddenly.
How old were you?
I was in my early teens. I must have been 13. And it was so scary and so emotional. I tried to tell my folks about it, and they said, oh, well, you're growing up, and be an enema. Would they know? Although my mother had had shock treatments and so forth, so I knew it was in the family, but I didn't know the pain of it. It is the most painful problem that a person can have. And I studied it and had treatment the best in the world. I have a psychiatrist now who's a very close friend. He was my doctor. And between us, we learned a lot. I'm in there research, and I'm dedicated or given my brain when I died. They're going to look at it and see. And I'm in the. Do you know Dr. Chapman?
Yeah.
Sandy Chapman. Sandy's going to be on the TV tomorrow between 8 and 9 on Good Morning, Texas. And she emailed me and says, sure would appreciate it if you would listen to it and give me your critique on it, which flattered me.
Sure.
But we're close friends. She called me into a meeting one time where they had some of the outstanding people who were trying to raise money for the brain study. And and they were looking in every direction. I commented, and they applauded the comments. And,
Wow.
and I was really flattered, because I was telling them, I said, you don't go after people because you want to study the brain. You have to get inside of them. You have to talk to them about, for instance, if somebody wanted some money from me, all they'd have to do is to mention depression and discuss it with me, instead of coming to me and saying they're doing a study on this thing. You have to get into it with people. And what's the name of the guy that fell off of a horse and had him playing polo?
Oh, Norman Brinker.
He was there. And some other big person was there, and they both said, that boy, that man is really right. And so I was only expressing what I thought, and they accepted it as being prime intelligence about what to do.
Did you know that? Did you know that already, or had you had experiences with people? Like, what were you passionate about when you were younger and trying to raise money for something or not? Or
well, I was in B'nai B'rith, and we tried to get members and so forth. And I was always very shy about being on the pulpit or on the stage. It still frightens me, but I practice. I always say something or do something. But it's still a fearful thing. But I guess that's what they say, that I have heard, that if you really like to talk and expound and so forth from the podium, beware, you're a bore.
oh, that's great. So you were always better one-on-one.
Yeah, in fact, that's I always tell people when they ask me to write a book, and so I joke about writing the book. I said, we got an excellent title.
Brudus?
Yes?
Tell me about your family now. What do you think of them? What do you think of their lives?
Well, you know about this this unusual situation where Leslie comes in.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the highlights of my life. And it gave me a chance to really prove in my heart that I really do appreciate these types of scenarios that come up where somebody, in fact, one of my friends said, how can you condone such a thing as this girl being pregnant out of wedlock? I said, that's way behind on the agenda. The fact is that I've got a beautiful family ready-made. And they couldn't understand it, and I don't mean to depreciate their feeling, but they're not along the path as far as I am. So my family now consists of there's three of them. And I think that Marty is gelling with Leslie, and I think that things are coming along pretty good. And the fact that Mark's up there sort of a guide on is helping it too.
It's helping him too, huh?
Yeah, it's helping Mark and it's helping them. And I think it's a unique situation, and I think it's a tremendous blessing. It's one of the highlights of my life. To think about that little girl there. See above there? That's her, the mother, next to Mark.
Gotcha.
In that football picture.
Amazing.
And again, I think that our contribution to Mark's success and his ability to fly free like he does is part of our schooling. We sent him to town on the bus when he was 4 years old as an adventure, and I think that gave him confidence. And also, I sort of had a sign too that you take it any way you want to. On the morning that he was born, I saw this, the foot of the rainbow was in the yard of the hospital.
Really?
At daybreak.
Right.
So who knows about these things? Mart has been a great blessing to a lot of things, through his tzedakah, which brings me to my next imposition. That's a resume that I'll give to you that maybe you can help.
I'll be happy to.
Look into it.
I'll be happy to. Did you and Bernice, did you plan, in terms of, you talked about the way you raised Mort to fly free and to be confident. Did you think about that and say we should do these things, or were you, what was it like parenting?
I felt an innate need to do this. I took him up in an airplane when he was 12 or 14. I encouraged him to play football. I think we really programmed the boy to be a success. He's a free thinker. He thinks of things like when he first went in parole into EDS with parole. One of his innovations was to get the his prospects' attention when they would say, how much is all this going to cost us? He'd say, he found an answer that's irresistible. He said, we'll charge you 1/2 of what we save you. That's irresistible, and it's beautiful, free thinking. And I think that's we program in that capacity by giving them a lot of running around. He went to Panama when he was 15 or 16. On a friend of mine was going, and he rode back into the plane, and all those kind of things that drew comments of it's dangerous, and why would you send a young kid like that, and so forth. But we taught him to be brave and accept.
And who were your role models to do that? Who were your role models in life? And then later, who were your role models in terms of parenting?
I think it was a God-given blessing that I had. I can't recall anybody. It seemed to me like I was always venturing on something new and innovative, and not with that purpose, not to be new, innovative, to draw attention, but because I felt like I had a blessing of knowing what was the right thing. That's sort of an innate consciousness of this.
Were you close with your parents? I mean, did they help you to...
No, they taught me mostly what not to do. And sometimes when you're exposed to these kind of things, you'll either become like that or you'll rise above it. And I think that I rose above it.
Interesting.
And forgiveness. I forgive them over and over again because they had a lifestyle that they were operating under, and each person has their own scenario, and I think that it's all important. The good, the bad, and the in-between. And I feel flattered that you'd even ask me to do this, and at the same time I admire your capacity to observe this unusualness in your fellow creatures.
Well, I adore you, and I always wanted to know. I told you a million times that you remind me so much of my own grandfather, and I wish I could have had the chance as an adult to ask him these questions and have these conversations.
Remember, your grandfather and I and me, we didn't invent it. It's just something that's here and with us, and we just have the blessing of tying into it. Remember, we're not to be praised for this insight. We just feel that it's a grant and a privilege and a blessing. So I'm aware of Judaism and our capacity and our genes. You couldn't want to be in a better group than we are.
It's true. It's very true.
And we've got to appreciate who we are more. And we don't have to hold still while a Hitler marauds us. We're the best fighters in the world.
So if you were going to give lessons now, let's say you had the chance to be the teacher that you wanted to be or the philosopher, what would you tell young people now today? We have the Hillel thoughts. What would you tell us about being Jewish or about living in this world or about business?
I would say one thing. Accept all of the different types that you see in the world. Accept it. Drop the judgment. Don't be too judgmental. And forgiveness. Forgive these, even forgive the Holocaust. This was part of the scenario that our people went through, and living and dying is not part of the. It's not to even be taken into consideration. For instance, these people that died in the bus wreck are. It's not the measure of whether you're successful because your children didn't die and these did die. It's really an immaterial thing. Although I realize and respect the deep feelings that people have about life and death. And I'm also a little scared of I'm not a brave person that come get me and I'm ready and all like that. I'm open to the prospects of what's on the other side, and I like, and it seems indelible in me that some wise person said we're going to laugh out loud at the simplicity of what's on the other side. Hello? It's the private line.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, if I have some more questions, can I call you back?
Sure, you know that.
Did you like this? It's fun, isn't it?
It's unusual. And I meant to tell you, you got your hair fixed up and it looks great.
Thank you very much. It gets shorter every time.
Well, do you naturally curly?
Yeah, yeah.
How long y'all been married?
9 years. Just over 9 years.
9 years.
We started late. We did the opposite that you did. We started very late.
Well, that was your...
it worked out great.
Yep.
That was your assignment.
That's
Remember,
right.
we all have assignments. It's not an accident. Nothing happens accidentally. Everything has a meaning to it, and everything is as it should be. We're where we're supposed to be, and that's a great comforting idea.
Are you happy with the way your life turned out?
Yes, and surprised. All this is a sort of an aftermath of the things that I've done. And I seem to enjoy the success of Mort. And it's better than having it yourself.
Really?
It really is. Having a well-known, forceful person, wealthy, a fellow like Mort is better than having the recognition yourself. And I luxuriate in that idea. All I have to do is just look good and go about my business, and everything else is taken care of.
Do you think he feels the same way? I mean, do you think that he wishes that...
Well, Mort is very undemonstrative. You never know. You have to unpeel Mort. You can't get to know him unless you peel him. And he's not easy to peel. But I take him like as it is. I take him like he is, and he works out his own things. I'll tell him something that I think is the right procedure, and he'll battle me maybe on it, but later on it comes out in a way that he don't even know himself. That's some of the wisdom or some of the
Okay.
solutions.
1 second.
Just trying to have a date.
Was he always that way?
You know, that's another strange thing used over and over.
Sure, we'll fix it so it's permanent. So tell me, so was Mort always that way?
I can't. There's a chasm between the little boy and even the young teenager and the grizzled, bearded old man that he is now. And I've tried to make a tie in, and I can't do it.
Hmm.
So maybe that's the way it's supposed to be. That suddenly you have a man or grown up.
That's very interesting. Do you think, did you feel it that way? I mean, I feel that somewhat with me, where I was a kid and now I'm an adult. Do you feel that, was that what happened with you as well, or do you feel the progression?
Suddenly I'm grown. Suddenly I'm grown. Yes. And I would give $1,000 for 1 minute if I could talk to my dad and tell him that I understand that I forgive. And also, one other thing that's always bothered me that I should have done, he was dying, and we left him to die alone. And if I had to do over again, I would have comforted him and been with him at the very end.
Sure.
But I wanted to escape the discomfort of being there. I had mixed emotions about it.
Sure. What was, last question. Well, what was fun in terms of when you were growing up? What was the fun stuff that you did with your siblings or with your parents?
There wasn't much fun in those days, but see which line it is. I have a tremendous sense of humor.
You sure did.
And the humor is our best friend, I found. And temper is our worst enemy, and they're very incompatible. You can't have one without the other. So I guess that I had fun in almost everything that I did. And I feel that I've had a full and complete life, especially being 91 years old. And in January, I'll be 92. And in insurance, after you reach the 6 month mark, then you go to the top of it. So in July the 5th, I'll be 92. In the old days, they used to do insurance that way. They take the nearest 6 months.
There you go. Well, this is wonderful.
Well, it's been it's wonderful for me, and I still feel amazed that anybody would want to know these or dig into these things. And especially you, because I know that you're a deep thinker. You're one of us.
Thank you very much. Now, you have so much wisdom to impart that this is a treasure.
Well, that humor stuff, they always say you ought to write a book and everything. Well, I've got the title. You know what my title is?
Now what?
From Passion to Prune Juice. Or my 65 years with the same person.
That is so great. I just heard, do you know Audrey and B. Rappaport?
No.
Well, anyway, they're a couple from Waco, and they've been married for a long time, and I just had lunch with them last week, and Audrey said that she tells all of her friends that it was only the first 50 years that were hard.
Well, that's the truth.
That's right.
You really, they say, what do you attribute your success to? And I say, you have to be lucky that you wasn't made permanent.
Interesting.
You have an unusual life, don't you? You're the stay-at-home person.
I am.
And she works. And I like that. Each person should fit wherever they fit best, regardless of the culture or the social amenities that goes with it. You know, usually the man.
That's right.
But if it's reversed, then that's a Barlow observation. Let it be.
Right. We're very happy with it.
Very unusual, and you seem to be proud of it too, and I think you should be. I sure hate to see you leave our family. You know.
Well, I made Mort promise that I get to stay part of the family as far as helping all of you with your tzedakah and the girls and that kind of thing.
You mean his children?
Yeah. So, and anything I can do, I still want to always be able to help, the people that you send and all
Yeah,
that.
she's not leaving the family. She's just going off to college.
Well,
that's it. I'll come back.
You're still expected for Shabbat dinner.
That's right.
and you, I recognize in you a very valuable person. And I feel absolutely confident in things like, people, this woman, I had lunch, Luis Martin, you know him.
Sure.
He took me to lunch at Charlie Fell's place. You know Charlie Fell?
No.
Charlie Fell is one of us. He's a Jewish fellow he's I guess you'd call him a promoter, a business promoter. He takes place people like Southwest Airlines and public, makes, what do they call these people?
With public relations?
Public
Oh,
relations.
uh-huh.
That's what he's a specialist in that.
Uh-huh.
And this woman,
Diana?
works part-time, Diana. I just met her at this time. And I had you in mind when she said, I'll just send you my resume. I gave Mary Edmonds Potter
Uh-huh.
I faxed it to her.
Okay.
So
Well, I'll pass it around. For
I
sure.
don't want it. These people, I feel sorry for people coming in contact with me. They don't know how to take it.
That's a treasure. That's why. People don't look at treasures always,
Well, like for instance, I don't mean it boastingly, but yesterday a new employee at the Scottish Rite, it was her birthday, 19th birthday, and I follow these gut feels that you have. I said, I thought to myself, I'm going to give her a gift, $19. So I only had $20, so I called her out of the little party that they were having, and I don't even know her name. And I said, can you give me $1? And she said, yeah, just a minute. So she gave me the $1, and I gave her the $20.
Oh, that's great.
I said, this is your present. Well, it is unique, but it came to me out of this gut feel. And it made her extremely happy because it was so unusual. So when I get these gut feels about things, I usually do them.
Well, anytime you need help with any of those gut feeling problems, you can always call me.
Yeah, you are a valuable person to have because, like I say, you're a Barlow.
Thank you. Thank you.
You might be too, but I don't know.
He is.